Last. Action. Hero. Picture this. Jack Slater, the world's most awesome cop, is on the rooftop of a school, facing the Ripper, a fiendish criminal and Slater's arch enemy. With one hand, the Ripper holds an axe. With the other, he's got Slater's son, Andy, by the throat. The Ripper grins and says, "Jack, what kept you? I promised Andy you'd come. I gave my word of honor he could watch you die." Now picture this. Nothing I've told you is real. It's a movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and showing at a rundown old theater in New York City. The seats are empty except for a few winos and a 12-year-old kid. How do I know? Because that kid is me, Danny Madigan. I like to spend my days at the theater watching action movies and talking to my buddy Nick, the projectionist. His favorite thing in life is magicians, like the great Harry Houdini. My favorite is movies, and that day, Nick makes me a happy man. He's previewing the new Jack Slater film at midnight, and he invites me to join him. "Are you serious?" I ask him. "See it before it opens?" "Get to school now," says Nick. "If you hurry, you'll only be 4 hours late." Nick isn't the only one who notices I've cut class. Turns out the principal calls my mom. When I get home, she reads me the riot act, then gets this sad look on her face. "Danny," she tells me, "I know it's hard coming here, leaving your friends, but how was I going to make it in Greencastle, Pennsylvania after your father died?" I give her a big hug and promise that I won't cut class again. Late that night, I sneak out and join Nick at the theater. He's holding a golden ticket that he says is magical. He claims he got it from Harry Houdini himself. Nick tears it in half, hands me the stub, and drops the other half into the ticket box. A few minutes later, I'm watching Jack Slater's newest adventure. It begins at the secret hideout of Tony Vivaldi, a mobster who's planning to trick Slater and kill off the rival Torelli mob at a funeral. Working for Vivaldi is a one-eyed assassin named Benedict, who hates his boss and has a phony eyeball with a bullseye painted on it. Remember that ticket stub? When Vivaldi's goons start chasing Slater through the streets, the ticket starts to glow. The goons throw a stick of dynamite at Slater's car, only it doesn't hit the car. It flies to the screen and lands in the theater. Kaboom! When I open my eyes, I'm riding in the back of Jack Slater's car. I'm in a movie. I try to talk to Slater, but he's more interested in playing chicken with the goons. Slater wins, because in the movies, the good guys always win. Next thing I know, Slater and I are at the police station, and his boss, Lieutenant Decker, is chewing him out as usual. Meanwhile, I'm trying to convince Slater he's an actor named Arnold Schwarzenegger. "Wait a minute," I tell him. "I can prove this is a movie. Look at that policeman over there. He's a cartoon cat." "Are you nuts?" says Decker. "Whiskers is one of the best men I've got." I try to convince Decker by spouting information about Vivaldi that I couldn't possibly know. "Please," I tell him, "you've got to listen to what I'm saying." He grins and says, "I've got the perfect listener for you. Meet your new partner." Then he points at Jack Slater. Now that we're partners, I offer to take Slater to Vivaldi's secret hideout. After only 23 wrong guesses, I find the place. Slater knocks on the door, and Benedict answers, wearing sunglasses. Let's just say he's not too happy to see us. Before we leave, Benedict takes off his shades, revealing a glass eye with a happy face on it. He shoots us a cold grin and says, "Have a nice day." As we walk off, I tell Slater some of Benedict's nasty comments about Vivaldi. Benedict overhears me, and it blows his mind. How does this punk kid know so much? Meanwhile, inside, Vivaldi can't believe Slater found his secret hideout. Benedict just nods and says, I want to check out Slater's short friend. Our next stop is the house of Slater's ex-wife. She's not home, but Slater's daughter, Whitney, is. Whitney's played by Meredith Caprice, my favorite actress and secret heartthrob. Hi, I tell her. I'm Danny Madigan, and I realize I haven't had that long of a life yet. But I just want you to know from now on, it's all gotta be downhill. Inside, Slater notices a photo of his son Andy, and he looks away upset. You see, in that movie with the Ripper, I didn't tell you what finally happened. The Ripper went over the side of the building, but he pulled Andy with him. Slater says he needs some fresh air, leaving Whitney and me alone. Before I can throw any moves on her, there's a knock at the door. It's Benedict along with 5 thugs. They push us around and Benedict grabs the glowing ticket out of my pocket. Whitney screams, but it's only an act. A minute later, she's pointing a gun at Benedict. By this time, I'm pretty excited. Partly by Whitney, but mostly by the knife Benedict's holding at my throat. This looks like a standoff, until the skylight explodes inward, revealing the human arsenal known as Jack Slater. Where did I come up with that line? Hey, I read movie posters. Crunch, snap, pow, kablam! The thugs bite to dust, leaving only Benedict, who hops into his car and rockets off down the street, with Slater right behind him. I grab a bicycle and try to follow them. That's when Benedict takes a U-turn and heads straight for me. I do what any movie hero would do. Okay, I say, chicken it is. Then it occurs to me, I'm not the hero. I'm the comedy sidekick. I veer off into the bushes and Benedict escapes with a magic ticket. But he leaves a calling card, namely a glass eye with the words, "Vengeance is mine." Whitney, Slater, and I are in the front yard when the eye explodes, destroying the house. We go back to the police station, where the guys are buzzing about the upcoming funeral of a fat gangster named Leo. The whole Torelli mob will be there, along with half the police force. But all Sergeant Decker can think about is Jack's most recent stunt. He throws a world-class fit and asks for Slater's badge. "Hand it over," he screams, "and I swear this time you'll never get it back." Slater's down in the dumps, but me, I'm thinking about Leo. I tell Slater what I heard Vivaldi say, that he's planning to rub out the Torelli gang at a funeral. Jack perks up. He does some checking and finds out 3 canisters of nerve gas have been stolen from the army. And there's been a break-in at the funeral home. It's obvious what Vivaldi's done. He's opened up Leo's body and stuffed it with nerve gas. We hurry to the roof of a hotel in downtown LA, where the funeral's being held. Slater spots his buddy Whiskers, the animated cat, and tells him to seal off the area. Then, handing me his gun, he points to a construction crane next door. "That hook needs to be at the roof in 2 minutes," he says. "Go!" The only problem is, when the crane operator sees my gun, he takes off. "How do I work this thing?" I yell. "I don't even know how to drive." While I'm fiddling with the controls, Slater pushes his way to the casket, where he grabs Leo's body and carries it through the crowd to the edge of the roof. He looks over the side, and what does he see? Me, with a crane. Sometimes I'm amazed by my own brilliance. As 100 gangsters cock their guns, Slater drops the body onto the hook, then jumps, grabbing onto Leo's ankle. He's dangling 12 stories up. That's when he notices Leo is ticking. In less than 30 seconds, Leo's gonna blow, and the nerve gas is gonna blow with him. I swing the hook away from the building, carrying the 2 of them past the construction site and over the La Brea tar pits next door. Slater signals me to stop, then yanks Leo free of the hook. Splat! They fall right into the tar pits. As Slater swims for shore, I try to clear people away from the pits. There's a muffled explosion, and a bubble forms on top of the tar. It gets bigger and bigger, and then very slowly it goes back down. The gas is trapped forever beneath the tar. We race across town to Vivaldi's place, where we find Benedict and one of his henchmen. Slater gets the drop on them. Payback time. He grabs the two of them and throws them at the wall. They go right through. I can't believe my eyes until I remember. Jack, I say, Benedict has the ticket. That's the key to everything. It's magic. My world. He's gone over to my world. We lunge to the wall and find ourselves in my neighborhood theater, where we look up just in time to see Benedict and his henchmen leaving the building. We follow them outside, and Jack looks around, amazed that he's in New York. Jack, I tell him, it all makes sense. I'll explain it to you. No, it makes absolutely no sense, but I'll explain it to you anyway, later. Meantime, be careful. Things work different here. Down the street, Benedict and his buddy hijack a cab and take off. We hop into an empty car and follow them. Only problem is, we come to a dead end, and there's the cab facing us. You can't play chicken in real life, I say. You'll crash. Slater shoves me out of the car, and I yell after him, You're gonna die! He takes off, and so does the cab. 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. Nobody's turning. There's an ear-splitting crash as they hit, head on. Then the car door opens, and Slater gets out. He's not hurt. It turns out his car had a driver's side airbag. We check out the cab. The henchman is dead, but Benedict is gone. And I think I know why. He used a ticket, I tell Jack. Maybe it's on all the time now. We go back to the theater, where I ask Nick if he knows what happened. He grins sheepishly and says, Ah, kid, I slept asleep with the dead in here. 2 in the morning when I woke, you had gone home. But Nick, I tell him, I wasn't home. I was in the movie. The ticket works. Slater steps out of the shadows, and Nick shakes his hand, saying, This is a wonderful moment for me, Mr. Slater. I've never met a fictional character before. But when Nick asks for his magic ticket, I tell him there's one minor problem. Benedict's here too, I say, and he's got the ticket. Nick's radio is on, and just then we hear a bulletin. It seems there's been a crime spree by men made up like famous villains. It can only be one thing. Benedict's been using the ticket, going into old movies and bringing out his evil friends. There's nothing we can do at the theater, so Slater and I head back to my place. When my mom sees me, she says, Where have you been? Do you know what time it is? Ma, I tell her, you know how you always say you wish I had more friends? Well, Slater holds out his hand and says, Hello, Mrs. Madigan. I'm Arnold Braunschweiger. While they're getting acquainted, I hit the sack. The next morning, my mom and Slater are sitting at the kitchen table. They've been up all night talking. My mom grins and says, Why didn't you tell me Jack was the cop? Everything seems cool until Slater chimes in. And what's this business of going to the movies at midnight when you knew your mother would worry? I can't believe it. My mom has turned Jack Slater into a wimp. I convinced my mom to let me go out again with Slater. As we hit the street, I see a poster announcing the premiere of the new Jack Slater movie tonight in Times Square. Looking at it, I'm struck with a terrible thought. Benedict can only succeed by stopping Slater, right? But what if he doesn't have to kill Slater at all? What if he only has to kill Arnold Schwarzenegger? The premiere would be just the place to do it. That night, Slater and I slogged through the rain to Times Square. When we get there, fans beg Jack for his autograph, but he waves them off and makes a beeline for the VIP section. Just as he spots Arnold, he hears someone shouting, "Jack, it's the Ripper! He's brought back the Ripper!" You guessed it, that's me yelling. If you think I sound excited, it's because the Ripper's standing over me with his axe. As Slater draws his gun, someone tackles him. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold gapes at Jack and says, "You're the best celebrity look-alike I've ever seen." By the time Slater recovers, the Ripper is gone. Jack hurries after him, and a moment later, he finds himself on a rain-soaked roof facing a familiar scene. The Ripper is holding his axe to a kid's throat, only this time, the kid isn't Andy Slater. It's me, Danny Madigan, and boy am I scared. Slater drops his gun and tells the Ripper to let me go. The Ripper chuckles and says, "We've played this number before, haven't we, Jack? Now let's see, what comes next? You throw away the gun, we did that part. You told me to let the boy go. I'm getting bored, let's just skip to the inn." So he grabs me and throws me off the building. He throws me off the building! Slater gapes at the empty space where I had stood. Then he turns to the Ripper and says, "That was a big mistake." The Ripper slings his axe at Slater. Jack ducks, and it dunks into a power pole behind him. Slater grabs the axe and slices the power line, then jumps onto the pole and watches as the live cable hits the puddle where the Ripper is standing. The Ripper jitters madly as he's electrocuted. He manages one last cry, "I'll be back!" Then Slater hears something else. It's a faint voice, calling for help. He looks over the side and sees me hanging onto a gargoyle by my fingernails. Slater climbs down and somehow manages to latch onto my wrist. Then, roaring with effort, he throws me up onto the roof. He hauls himself up over the edge and lies there panting. This hero stuff has its limits. If this were a movie, the two of us would walk off into a sunset. But real life has some nasty surprises, such as Benedict standing on the roof with his gun drawn. He pulls out the ticket and laughs, telling us how he plans to take over the world using movie bad guys. "Think of the villains," he says. "I'll dine with Freddy Krueger, shop for chainsaws with Leatherface, plan a party for Hitler. Why not? Invite Dr. No and Hannibal Lecter, and we'll all have a christening for Rosemary's Baby. Think of the villains, Jack. All I need to do is snap my fingers and they'll come. Oh yes, they're lining up to get here, and you know why? Because here, Jack, in this world, the bad guys can win. I shall miss you, Jack." And with that, he shoots Slater in the chest. It can only happen in real life. Jack Slater is dying. As Benedict raises his gun to finish the job, I blindside him and send him tumbling into Slater. The gun goes skittering across the roof, and I grab it. With a last-ditch effort, Slater manages to push Benedict away. I toss Jack the gun. He takes aim and fires. Benedict must be wearing one of his special eyeballs, because when the bullet hits, he explodes in a tower of flame. 5 minutes later, Slater and I are in an ambulance, heading for the hospital. The paramedics are doing all they can for Jack, but it's not enough. Suddenly I know there's only one way to save him. He needs to get back home, I tell the paramedics. Back to where it's just a flesh wound, where he does 10 sequels. Don't you understand? We've got to take him back to the movies! The paramedics stare at me like I'm nuts. They give me no choice. I reach into Slater's jacket and pull out his revolver. "Turn around," I say. "We're going back." So what do? They open the doors and get the heck out. Great, just great. They always run away. I scramble into the driver's seat and shout, "Hang on, Jack!" I careen through the streets, weaving back and forth. When I spot the theater, I yank the wheels sideways and go crashing through the front doors. I jump out yelling at the top of my lungs, "Nick, fire up the projector! Hurry! Slater's dying!" As the lights go down and the movie starts, I drag Slater down the aisle. I push against the screen, feeling around frantically. Just hold on, I tell Jack. The door's gotta be here someplace. But it's no use. It won't open without the ticket stub. Then I remember. Nick tore the ticket in half. There's another stub. I race to the ticket box and smash it open. There it is, the other half of the ticket. But it's not glowing. I grab it anyway. I'll get you home, Jack. You'll see. You can't die. I don't say it, but I'm thinking about my dad. This time it's gonna be different. This time I won't let him die. Slater reaches out towards the ticket. When he touches it, it starts to glow. Bright colors flood the theater, and the next thing I know, Slater and I are back in the police station, staring at Whiskers. The cat stares back, then goes running off down the hall. They got Jack, he shouts. Doctor! Hey, Doc, move! Slater looks over at me. You've got to get back, he says. Danny, I'm just an imaginary hero. You've got a real life. I tell him I'm afraid he'll forget me. He just grins and gives me a classic Jack Slater line. Anybody who thinks that would be making a big mistake. I nod and step away. And suddenly, I'm back in the theater. On the screen, I see a doctor come running up and bend over Slater. The doc looks at the bullet hole, then laughs. I wouldn't even call this a flesh wound. Whiskers, wash him up good and he'll be fine. Nick comes up behind me, and I hand him the ticket. Nick, I tell him, you've got to be a magician after all. It really does work. No, he says, the ticket is yours. And I think maybe the magic was too. I put the stub in my pocket and head out into the night. Outside, my mom comes running up. She figured something must have been wrong because I'd been gone so long. So she's been racing all over town looking for me, worried sick. I give her a big hug and say, it's okay, Mom. Everything's okay. On the way home, she wonders about Jack Slater and says, I just thought, maybe dinner once in a while. The three of us, once in a while. I tell her, I think I got a way to arrange it. She looks at me funny. As we laugh and turn for home, I reach into my pocket and feel the ticket. It's glowing. So am I.